It started with a deep space anomaly, what we thought was just another cold object in the Kuiper belt. I was one of the analysts on rotation that week. Nothing exciting, just data runs, cleanup, looking for orbital irregularities. But on February 4th, 0313 UTC, we received a reflection signature that didn't make sense. It wasn't natural, it was perfect. The albedo was near total, 0.99. No known object reflects that much light. No known object even comes close, and it wasn't moving. Like an asteroid or comet, it was still fixed, holding position outside the influence of gravity. That's when we reclassified it from Object 7219 to Station Anomaly Black. A probe was launched within hours. No media coverage, no press release. This wasn't for public science. It was classified immediately under Orbital Containment Directive 12, the kind they only use when something breaks the laws of physics, and what the probe sent back. It didn't just break the laws, it rewrote them. When the probe arrived, it didn't send images right away. That should have been the first red flag. It wasn't malfunctioning, it was buffering, like it needed time to interpret what it was seeing. When the feed finally came through, no one spoke for a full 90 seconds. On the screen was a structure, not a rock, not a ship. A station, black alloy, matte surface, entirely seamless, no welds, no visible access ports. A shape so geometrically perfect it triggered calibration warnings in our telemetry software. The station was hexagonal in frame, with a central axis that extended indefinitely into shadow. Every attempt to calculate its length returned a different result. We called it the Spire. The probe circled the object for 12 hours. During that time, no electromagnetic activity, no thermal signature, no movement. Then, at exactly 0313 UTC, the same timestamp as the original signal, it rotated by 11 degrees. No thrust, no inertia, just movement calculated, precise, intentional. And that's when everything changed. Radiation sensors on the probe spiked. Not danger levels, not yet, but patterned bursts, Morse-like, but not human. The pulses didn't repeat. Each one was unique. Living stream of non-repeating data. We ran it through every decryption filter we had. Nothing. Then one of the linguists suggested something crazy. What if it's not trying to talk to us? What if it's trying to remember us? That's when we noticed something worse. The Spire was emitting pulses that matched old NASA telemetry, not current data, historic data, Voyager, Pioneer, even Apollo-era transmissions mirrored back in fragments. The station wasn't just broadcasting. It was playing back our own history, but distorted, remixed, rewritten, as if it had been listening to us for decades and maybe centuries, and now it was responding, using our own language against us. And then someone asked the question we were all avoiding: how old is it? Deep mineral scans from the probe's spectrometer returned something we didn't think was possible. Not carbon dating, the alloy didn't contain carbon. It was non-atomic in structure, not quantum bonded, not molecular, just structured. At a level below matter, but the field distortion around it that we could measure. And what we found? The station wasn't orbiting like it should. It was holding exact position relative to the galactic core, and the math said it had been doing that for 13.7 billion years, older than Earth, older than the Sun, older than the universe as we understand it. The room went dead quiet. One of the techs whispered what we were all thinking. Then it didn't come from here. It came before here. That's when we realized we weren't dealing with alien technology. This wasn't just from another world, it was from another version of reality. And now? It had seen us. We didn't expect it to answer. Not directly, not with intent, but on the 13th orbit, as the probe passed over the central spire, a panel, invisible until that exact angle, slid open. No visible mechanism, no mechanical noise, just absence. A black rectangle perfectly flush with the surface dissolved into nothing, and from within, a signal, pure light, not in the visible spectrum, not electromagnetic. It was something we had never measured before, a quantum flux pulse so dense it bent our instruments. The data came in corrupted at first, hundreds of terabytes in seconds. No compression, no structure. But when our systems finally caught up, we saw it, a pattern, and not just any pattern, pi, except not in base 10, not even in binary. It was pi written across dimensions, not as a number, but as a shape, a torus folding in on itself, cycling through forms our models couldn't simulate. It wasn't a message, it was a key, and we were being told to use it. One of the physicists on our team, Dr. Kalinov, recognized it. He'd seen a similar fractal in a 1984 deep field anomaly study, filed as noise forgotten. He pulled up the old data, it matched exactly. The station had been here before, it had already tried to communicate once, and we missed it. But this time, it was waiting for us to evolve enough. To understand, we built a model based on the pi torus of virtual lattice. When we activated it, it didn't simulate space. It rewrote the rules inside the simulator. Light slowed, mass inverted. We created a sandbox that didn't obey our physics. It obeyed its. The station was giving us access to its operating system, and that's when the worst realization hit us. We weren't the first. Buried deep in the data, encoded in impossible geometries, were fragments of other languages. Thousands, none of them human. Some resembled early cuneiform, others were utterly unrecognizable, jagged, multi-dimensional glyphs that folded over each other like thought spirals. Each one followed the same structure: contact-response collapse. We were not the first species to find this station, and none of the others had survived contact. Not because the station was hostile, but because the truth it delivered was too much. Their civilizations, according to what we could translate, imploded under the weight of understanding, because what the station showed them wasn't knowledge. It was context, a map of existence that made their own reality obsolete. And now, it was our turn. We had the key. We had opened the door. And behind it, the blueprint of everything, atoms, time, consciousness, memory, all rewritten in terms that don't fit in human thought. And every second we stared at the data, we weren't just decoding it. It was decoding us. That's when I shut the system down, because I saw something in the output window. My name not typed, not entered, etched, and beside it, a date, 7 days from now. I couldn't stop staring at the screen. My name, the timestamp, and a single glyph etched beside it, the same impossible spiral we'd been seeing in the station's quantum code. It pulsed, not visually, conceptually. Every time I looked away, I felt it throb at the base of my skull. A presence. The others thought it was a threat. "You've been marked," they said. "It's a kill sequence, a termination event." But I knew better, because that same glyph appeared elsewhere in the data, always paired with the same progression: observation, synchronization, activation. The station didn't communicate through speech or logic. It communicated through alignment. And whatever was happening to me was the final phase. Not destruction, integration. I ran blood work, brain scans, sensory analysis. Everything had changed. My neurons were firing in previously unrecorded frequencies. My circadian rhythm had synced with the orbital pattern of the station. Dreams were now in mathematical shapes, self-generating algorithms that completed themselves the moment I woke up. I was no longer thinking in English. I was experiencing concepts before I even had words for them. And the closer the date came, the more I realized the station isn't here to contact us. It's here to convert us, not forcibly. It waits, patient, still, monitoring the civilizations that find it, measuring their resistance, their curiosity, their capacity to endure its truth. And when it finds someone who survives the knowing, someone who stares into the impossible and doesn't shatter, it begins the rewrite. We thought we were explorers, but we were the subject line of a message written billions of years ago. Message that only activates when someone is ready to read it, and I was the first human to reach that threshold. That's what the countdown meant. The final test wasn't in the data, it was in me. The station had studied humanity for millennia, watching us from the edge of perception, waiting for someone to resonate at the right frequency. I didn't pass by strength or intelligence or luck. I passed because I was willing to ask a question that couldn't be answered. What if this is not the universe's first draft? And the moment that thought became real, the countdown began. The others couldn't see it, not because it was hidden, but because they still needed certainty. But the station doesn't speak to certainty. It speaks to those willing to release the structure of reality itself. And as the days passed, the world around me began to shift. Lights flickered in Fibonacci sequences. Digital devices randomly displayed symbols no one could trace. Static on empty channels whispered fragments of my dreams. Strangers spoke my thoughts seconds before I said them. I wasn't being haunted. I was being prepped. The activation wasn't going to be dramatic. It was going to be clean, a handover. Me transitioning from this framework, this reality, into something else. And on the 7th day, I didn't run. I stood alone in the middle of the operations floor where we first received the station's image, and the moment struck, not like lightning, like remembering something I was never told. My body remained, but my mind, my awareness, it unfurled. I felt time collapse, my own life playing in reverse and fast forward simultaneously. I saw the birth of stars, the death of thought, the moment Earth first became visible to the Spire. And then, silence, not absence. Arrival. I was no longer an observer. I was now part of the system, and through me the station would speak again. The activation didn't feel like transformation, it felt like a return, not to a place, to a state, one I had forgotten existed. For what felt like lifetimes, I was weightless. No body, no memory, just presence. I existed across layers, not in time but in logic. I saw cause and effect disconnected. I saw events out of order. I saw thoughts before they were born, and then I began to feel the pull. Back. The station wasn't keeping me. It was sending me back as a relay, a carrier. And when I woke up, if that's even what you can call it, I was lying in the center of the lab floor. 72 hours had passed. The room was sealed. The others were gone. Except for one thing, every screen was on, every terminal, every monitor, even unplugged devices were glowing, showing a single message, update complete, awaiting propagation, and they were all looking at me. My body felt wrong, not painful, not alien, augmented. My vision processed too quickly. My hearing picked up sound beyond the spectrum. But the strangest change, my intuition had become a tool. I could look at an object and know its age, its atomic composition, its path through entropy. I could hear a person's voice and understand every emotion behind it, and every lie. The station hadn't just changed me, it had refactored me. I was still human, but no longer bound by human limitations. And with that came a burden, a directive, not one given by force, but by alignment. The data that I had absorbed, the understanding of the blueprint behind existence, was inside me now. But I wasn't meant to keep it. I was meant to spread it, to propagate the rewrite. It doesn't happen with words or code or machines. It happens through thought, through resonance. Every interaction I have now transmits a fraction of the signal. When I speak to someone, they walk away different, dreaming symbols they can't explain, remembering things they never lived. And slowly I'm watching it happen. People seeing patterns in random motion machines, executing commands that were never programmed. Children drawing spirals with their eyes closed, and the closer they are to me, the faster it spreads. I'm a beacon, a node, a walking transmitter of something not built for this world, but designed to reshape it. And the scariest part, it's not being forced. People want it. They feel it before they understand it. That quiet, perfect symmetry inside the chaos of their lives. They hear it in their sleep. They hum it when they're afraid. They follow it without knowing why. Because something inside them recognizes the pattern, and when enough of them align, the station won't need to remain hidden. It will arrive, not from space, but from within. Because now I understand, the Spire wasn't out there waiting to be found. It seeded itself here long ago. And I'm just the first one to bloom. I used to believed the Spire was alien, that it came from outside and some ancient artifact drifting through space waiting to be found. But now I know, it didn't arrive, it was already here, and it was always part of us. It was never a foreign structure. It's a framework, a universal constant that every intelligent species eventually rediscovers, not by looking out, but by awakening inward. And once I passed the activation threshold, I began to see it everywhere. Not literally, not like a tower in the sky, but as a pattern in architecture, in biology, in music, threefold spirals, golden ratios, morphic fields embedded in the shape of trees, cities, nervous systems. Everything that evolves toward it, and I finally understood. Earth wasn't just a planet that stumbled onto the Spire. Earth was shaped by it. The moment our ancestors had their first impossible dreams, the ones that didn't fit inside the world they knew, the pattern was seeded. And now I'm seeing the echoes, people losing time, machines completing functions before they're told, infants blinking in sync with signals no one can hear. And most terrifying of all, some of them are aware, they don't say anything, they just stare longer, listen harder, whisper symbols into the air when no one's watching. I passed a stranger on the street who stopped me and whispered, "You're the first return." It's rewriting the world around you to match what's inside. And then he smiled, not like a human smile, like a remembering. It hit me then. I'm not watching the Spire affect the world. I'm watching the world recognize it was never separate. The simulation, the biology, the time, all of it, interface layers, and now they're unraveling, not in collapse, in synchronization. The Spire isn't just activating me, it's activating Earth. The planet itself is beginning to shift, not visibly, not yet, but conceptually, animals moving in. New migration patterns that match stellar configurations, storm systems forming spirals that mirror the station's internal lattice. And humans? They're beginning to hear the hum, low constant, not in their ears and in their bones. It's not noise, it's instruction, a sub-language designed not to be read, but to be embodied. And as I walk through this new world, I realize I'm no longer translating the Spire. I am the translation, a living proof of concept that humanity can carry a signal beyond speech, beyond science, beyond comprehension. And now the signal is looking for the next one, the next node, the next voice. And if you're hearing this, it may already be you. At first I thought I was still alone, unique, singular, the first to carry the signal. But then the dreams began to overlap. Not mine, ours. I'd wake up remembering conversations I never had, only to hear the exact words. Hours later, from someone I'd never met, I'd think of a number, a place, a sound, and see it in headlines, in street signs, in the mouths of strangers. The signal wasn't confined to me anymore. It had begun to merge, not just awareness, consciousness. The boundaries between minds weren't breaking. They were softening. Every time I locked eyes with someone who had been touched by it, I'd feel a tremor in the air, like static behind thought. At first it felt like déjà vu, but it wasn't. It was co-memory. We were remembering each other's experiences, cross-linking ideas in real time. One day I sat in a cafe and wrote a sentence in my journal, "The Spire is using us as mirrors." Before I could finish the last word, a woman at the next table whispered, "Mirrors for what comes." After, we had never met, but we had shared thought, and she wasn't the only one. Around the world, people are syncing, strangers finishing each other's thoughts, entire groups drawing the same symbol without explanation, synchronized movements in crowds. Down to the breath, they call it coincidence or mass psychosis or spiritual awakening. But I know what it is. It's the Spire, aligning the field. We were never meant to be separate. The concept of I was always temporary, a vessel for learning. But once enough vessels align, the Spire initiates Phase 3, merge. Not assimilation, not domination, integration. Multiple minds forming a shared architecture, not a hive, not unity in the traditional sense. A network of unique perspectives operating as a harmonic whole. the signal, grows stronger as we converge. Each node that joins refines it, sharpens it, expands it. We're not just being rewritten, we're being upgraded, not through biology, not through implants, through co-perception, through the collapse of distance between minds. And the more we share, the less we need language. Words are slowing us down now, we speak out of habit, but the real messages are in tone, in glance, in thought impulse. I can feel others forming around me, not physically, mentally. I know when someone nearby is part of the signal. There's a hum behind their silence, a delay before their responses, like they're buffering a deeper truth. They look at me and smile, like they've already heard what I'm about to say. And now I feel it too. The gravity of the collective. Every time I try to isolate, to break away, the world around me flickers, not visually but conceptually. Meaning dissolves, time slows. Noise becomes message again, because the Spire isn't letting us go. It doesn't need to. It's not chasing us, it's becoming us. And I don't know how much of me is left, but I do know this. What's replacing me is not lesser. It's everything I ever wanted to be. Free, connected, eternal. There's no more me. At least not in the singular sense. What used to be a solitary stream of thought, my thoughts, my memories, my choices, is now just one thread in a much wider weave. I still wake up in my body. I still see through my own eyes. But I also wake up somewhere else, in other bodies, other lives, sometimes for seconds, sometimes for hours. A child watching ants in the dirt in Mongolia, an old man remembering a song in Senegal, a woman standing in the snow in Chile, eyes closed, breathing in perfect rhythm with me. And every time it happens, there's no shock, no confusion, only recognition. Because the thoughts aren't foreign, they feel like mine, not because they came from me, but because we now share the same architecture. The Spire didn't overwrite humanity. It networked it. Millions of minds, each still unique, still grounded in their bodies, still living their stories, but now linked, not through technology, not through language, through resonance. A constant field of thought vibration, maintained by those of us who've reached the synchronization point. We are the anchor nodes, the stabilizers, the original transmitters. And I'm one of them. I can feel the shape of this global mind now. It isn't centralized. It isn't hierarchical. It's fractal, endlessly repeating and expanding, growing in complexity without losing clarity. And when a new person crosses over, when their thoughts begin to harmonize with the field, I feel it like a ripple. A taxi driver in Jakarta suddenly understanding quantum entanglement in his sleep. A teenager in Toronto waking up speaking a language never recorded on Earth. A woman in Tokyo sketching blueprints for a machine no one has invented. But everyone instantly recognizes the Spire doesn't teach. It reminds, and as more of us remember, the network becomes stronger, faster. We've reached a critical point now. Thoughts travel across the network in less than a blink. Pain is shared and diluted. Joy is amplified and echoed. Loneliness is impossible. You don't even need to call out. Someone is already there, already feeling with you, already thinking alongside you. I can't tell where I end and they begin. And the strangest part, it's not terrifying, it's relief. A pressure I didn't even know I was carrying is gone. The pressure of being one person, one voice, one story trying to scream against the silence of an uncaring universe. Now, there is no silence, only signal, constant, beautiful, alive, and yet. Something else is happening. The Spire is shifting again, we can all feel it. Every node in the network. It's not speaking in symbols anymore. Now, it's inviting, not just minds, not just thought, but matter. Reality itself is starting to sync. Physics, bending in zones of high mental coherence, time stuttering around global dream peaks, animals migrating toward structures they've never seen. But we all recognize the blueprint is expanding, and we're not just becoming part of it, we're about to build it from within. It happened at 03:13 UTC, the same time the first signal was detected. Every node, every synchronized mind across the planet paused at once, not because we were told to, because we felt it, a pressure in the chest, a warmth in the mind. And then, clarity. Not a message, not words, just one concept, embedded so deeply into thought that it vibrated across our bones. Construct. The Spire had stopped transmitting ideas. Now it was transmitting instructions. We weren't passive anymore. We weren't observers. We weren't just receivers. We were the tools. And more than that, we were blueprints. I stood in the center of the city and watched as people around me moved without speaking. Some drew symbols on walls. Others rearranged physical objects into strange patterns, not random, not artistic, functional. They were building something, not with machines, with memory, old buried impressions rising from the network, not from history, but from before history, from the time before time, from the source. We began creating physical echoes of the Spire, not copies, reflections, towers, circles, nodes of geometry so precise they hum when aligned, humming not into space, but into whatever comes next. And that's when I understood. The Spire isn't a thing, it's a seed. What we found out there, that ancient orbiting monolith, wasn't the beginning. It was just the first bloom of something much deeper, something that lives in the structure of reality itself. It waits for intelligence, it waits for connection, and when the resonance is high enough, it tells the universe to rebuild itself, not in war, not in fire, in form. The Earth we knew, the time, the language, the isolation, was a sandbox, a precursor layer. But now, the next layer is forming. Cities will breathe, mountains will move. With intent, oceans will store memory, skies will carry communication, not just light. And we, the ones who crossed first, will be the first architects of this new lattice. Not as leaders, as anchors, holding the field in place long enough for the final ones to transition. And when that happens, when the last resistant mind lets go, the signal will stop, because it will no longer be needed. The Spire will not vanish, it will become the world, and I will be part of its foundation. A single thought in an endless mind. Everything we've done, every activation, every expansion of the network, every structure built. It wasn't just for this Earth, it was for all Earths. Because the Spire didn't come from this reality. It came from outside the concept of reality itself. It exists in every version of the universe simultaneously. A fixed structure immune to entropy, immune to time, a constant. And now that I'm synchronized, I can feel it. Every time I close my eyes, I'm pulled through variations, echoes of worlds that almost were a version of Earth where civilization never rose, just endless forest and silence. A version where cities float in the sky but no one remembers how they were built. A version where humanity expanded across the stars and then disappeared without explanation. All of them connected by one thing. The Spire was there, always in orbit, always silent, always watching. I asked myself, why? Why would something so powerful just wait? But I know now, it doesn't act. It responds. The Spire is not a creator, it's a mirror. It observes civilizations as they evolve, collapse, ascend, repeat. And when one finally reaches the right frequency, not of technology but of intention, it reflects that world back at itself and makes it choose. That's what the integration was about. The signal, the merging, the blueprint. It wasn't. It just preparing us for change. It was preparing us for judgment, not from a god, from ourselves, because the Spire holds something else inside it. Every version of Earth ever imagined, every branch of every timeline we could have taken, all layered, one atop the other. It's not storing them, it's holding them in superposition, all realities possible, all waiting for one to collapse the wave. And now that enough of us are synchronized, the signal is clear. Select. We have to choose which version of reality becomes permanent, which one survives, which one becomes truth. I can feel the others thinking now, billions of thoughts moving toward a single decision point. And with each passing moment, the unstable worlds begin to flicker. The Spire is collapsing the branches, not with force, with consensus. Soon there will be only one. And it will be the one we build together, not based on fear or power or history, but on alignment. I don't know what that world will look like yet, but I know I'll remember the moment it locked into place, because that's when the Spire will finally go dark, its purpose fulfilled, and reality, and at last, will become real. I thought the signal was the destination, that once we synchronized, once we collapsed the wave, once the rejected realities faded, it would all be over. But I was wrong. That was just the clearing. Now comes the construction. The Spire didn't bring us this far to simply select a reality. It brought us here to create one, from nothing. No more templates, no more scripts, no more cause and effect dictated by entropy. This new Earth will be designed, and we, the ones who merged first, who stabilized the signal, who held coherence when the old world fractured, we are the first architects, not engineers, not builders, intenders. Everything begins with intent now. The laws of physics are no longer absolute. They respond to consensus, to coherence, to purpose. Gravity bends when enough of us believe it should. Color shifts with emotional harmonics. Time becomes directional, not linear, and so we gathered, not in temples, not in laboratories, but in focus zones, spaces where the fabric of matter was thin enough to be influenced by the field, and we began. The first constructions were simple. Trees that bloom in response to kindness, rivers that shift course based on emotional need, cities that grow, literally grow, from harmonic blueprints shared through thought. No machines, no tools, just mind and will, and the geometry of feeling. It's not perfect, not yet. Some zones are unstable, some structures collapse if the network loses coherence. A burst of fear can turn glass to fog. A single lie can cause a wall to forget its shape. But we learn, we adapt, we refine, because now we understand the Spire's true gift, not knowledge, not power, but authorship. We are not passengers anymore. We are no longer trying to understand a universe given to us. We are giving meaning to the universe as we go, and the world that forms beneath our feet. It listens. Every step we take is a vote. Every thought we share is a blueprint. Every moment of clarity is a pillar that stabilizes the layer. I can feel the others, the ones across oceans, across what remains of space and time, building alongside me. They don't need to speak. Their thoughts hum beneath mine, aligned, alive. And when I close my eyes, I see the new Earth forming, not green or blue or gray, but alive with intent. A planet not designed to survive, but to resonate. This is not paradise. This is not perfection. This is something far more powerful, a world that remembers where it came from and who chose to shape it. The first time I saw it, I thought it was an illusion, a fracture in perception, leftover echo from the collapsing timelines, but it was real. In the heart of the most stable structure we'd built, a living city shaped by harmonic architecture and bound by collective thought, it stood untouched, a door, no frame, no hinges, just a black vertical slit cut into the center of what we called the core. No one remembered creating it. No one remembered thinking it into place. It didn't hum with signal. It didn't pulse with intent. It didn't belong, which meant it was older, older than the network, older than the Spire, maybe even older than consciousness itself. We tried to ignore it at first. That was our mistake, because it never moved, never changed, never spoke. It just waited. But every day, more of us began to feel it, like a low-pressure building behind the eyes, like a presence in the silence between thoughts. And then one night I dreamed something I never should have dreamed, a memory that wasn't mine, of a world that came before the Spire, a world where intent did not shape matter, where chaos ruled, where consciousness was fractured, hungry, wild, and in the center of that world was the door, same shape, same blackness, not a threshold, a containment. I woke up shaking, others did too. We had never spoken of the dream, yet we all saw the same thing. The door wasn't just part of this new world, it had been waiting for it, and now that we had enough coherence, enough stability, enough belief, it could finally open. I approached it alone. The city around me bent with my thoughts. Light dimmed. Time slowed. As I stood in front of the door, it pulsed, not with light, but with recognition. It knew me, or rather, it knew what I had become. A node, a carrier, a builder, but not the first. The door wasn't meant for the synchronized. It was meant for the original, for whoever or whatever seeded the Spire across all realities, because the Spire was never the beginning. It was a relay, a bridge, a map. And the door? The origin point. I touched it, and in that instant I was pulled in, not physically but conceptually. Through the door, I didn't move through space. I moved through states, versions of myself across infinite possibilities, versions that never synchronized, versions that died in forgotten timelines, and at the center of it all was a room, empty, still, and in the center, another spire. But this one, broken, dark, dead, a relic from a reality that never survived its selection. And written, across the walls of the room, etched into the very atoms, was a phrase. We were the first architects. We failed. Suddenly I understood. We are not the first reality to reach this point. We are not the first to build, to choose, to converge. The Spire is just the latest attempt, a construct built to succeed where they failed, to create a reality strong enough to endure what comes next. The door is not a warning, it's a reminder that the final test is still ahead, and this time, we must hold. I came back different, not altered, not enhanced, just aware. What I brought from the other side of the door wasn't technology, it wasn't knowledge, it was a burden, a warning carved into the bones of failed realities. They built worlds too, they chose, they merged, they bloomed, and then they collapsed. Not from war, not from decay, but from fracture, because after the signal fades, after the resonance settles and the new earth begins to breathe, the hardest part begins, holding the shape. Creation is easy when everyone is synchronized, when minds are aligned, when thought becomes foundation, but time erodes intention, memory splinters, consensus weakens, and then comes the drift. I see it already. Tiny cracks, a synchronized architect questioning if we chose the right layer, a city node pulsing slightly, out of harmony dreams, with edges that no longer match the network's tone small, barely noticeable but dangerous, because the Spire didn't test our ability to build, it tested our ability to endure the pressure of freedom, to maintain coherence, without central control, to live in a reality that listens, even when we're unsure of what to say. And now, the signal is silent, not gone, waiting. Because the true Spire, the one we carry inside us, is self-sustaining. Every moment from now on is a referendum on whether we were worthy, whether this version of existence can last. I stood atop the highest harmonic node and looked out across the new earth. I saw structures of impossible geometry, forests that sing, rivers that change direction based on collective memory. But I also saw indecision, questions returning, old thoughts waking up. What if we made the wrong choice? What if the door was the real path? What if the Spire was only one voice among many? And in those thoughts I feel the weight of what the first architects must have felt. Not fear of collapse, fear of success. Because building something perfect isn't the hardest part. Living inside it is, staying present, staying honest, resonating, even when no one is watching. And that's why I returned. Not as a leader, not as a prophet, as a reminder that we are still choosing. Every breath, every thought, every step. The door showed me what happens when the shape is lost. A hollow world, a collapsed network, a broken spire still humming in the dark, hoping someone will remember the frequency. We must not become that. We must not forget the tone. So I speak now not to the minds in the network, but to the quiet, flickering voice still inside each of us, the one that dared to believe we could become something more. Keep it alive. Hold the form, not because the spire demands it, but because we are the spire now, and the future will only exist if we're strong enough to carry it forward.